Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The Richards Bay Coal Terminal is keen to boost the export potential of emerging black coal juniors in close partnership with South Africa's state-owned rail company Transnet. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
RBCT and Transnet would like to establish a model to increase coal export capacity for black coal miners, juniors. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Eskom now is looking to promote juniors. They're saying that the next billion tons of coal that they get will come from black controlled mining enterprises, and that is 50% plus one share. So when you have that domestically, there's a spin-off when you start exporting, because the model of survival in South African coal is that the lower grade coal goes to Eskom and therefore a lower price, and the better coal you export it, and that's where you keep your business sustainable. So the introduction of the junior miners is linked directly around Eskom's demand for coal and then their need to survive by exporting. Up to now, it's been the bigger companies that have got access to Richards Bay Coal Terminal. They own it. Now Glencore is the biggest single holder of rights to that terminal, but there's also BHP Billiton and Anglo. So, you've got these very big 200 wagon trains coming in now, and they know how to deal with those. If juniors come in, it's going to be a new ball game, but they're prepared to deal with the juniors, to create a new model. They want to work with Transnet because it's no good that the rail line capacity gets reduced again, because we've had a situation where the port capacity is higher than the rail capacity. The rail at one stage fell back to 2005 levels. It's now coming back quite strongly and quite efficiently, but you still need to be able to work very closely in this partnership. And that's what they're striving to do, to create this model of partnership and to be open-minded about it. So if they create these 19 million additional tons, because they're already on 91 million tons, they want to go to 110 million tons, that 19 million extra tons, they would like Transnet, a state-owned enterprise, to work hand in glove with Richards Bay Coal Terminal, which is a private enterprise. And they want to do that in an open-minded way. And from open-minded, it could even mean that Transnet takes sort of full operational control of that section. If it's open-minded, it could mean that. And perhaps that is what Transnet is looking for at the moment, and may need, particularly when you're coming in under a new paradigm of smaller coal producers.
Now, what challenges does RBCT face, and what solutions are there to tackle these?
Amongst the issues is that they need to align capital expenditure. So if Transnet is going to spend more capital and therefore produce more or transport more coal, and that's Transnet Freight Rail, they then need to align their capital expenditure to that so that there's a match. It's important that the two capital expenditures and the operational expenditures are aligned. So CapEx and OpEx, to go together for biggest efficiency, because a lot of the world relies on the Richards Bay Coal Terminal for quick turnaround. You don't have ships in the roadstead there. They come in and they go out 48 hours. You don't, like a normal port, you see a lot of ships outside. There were quite a few out when they had this power failure, which was quite a freak incident, because they're 38 years old, and they they've traditionally tried to protect themselves by having two sources of power coming in. And ironically, both sources of power gave in at the same time. But you're talking about 38-year-old infrastructure, and they should have been looking at it far sooner than they did. And they lost 9 days. So which means that instead of us exporting 75 million tons of coal in 2014, they're now saying, no, we won't do more than 73 million tons. That's the sort of thing South Africa can't afford at the moment. These are real exports. You've got the iron ore going out, you've got the coal. Together it represents about 40% of our exports. You don't want them, falling behind unnecessarily, particularly through infrastructure. So both Richards Bay Coal Terminal must, check up on its maintenance and do things thoroughly. At the same time, you have a much more determined Transnet coming through. So they're not far apart. At corporate level, there's a lot of tension. We see it when we go to presentations. We see it when the Transnet present results and questions are asked. You can see that tension emerge. But in actual fact, operationally, they're not far apart. And you can see, I walked into the tall control tower that overlooks this very well-run harbour. And, they're sitting shoulder by shoulder, sitting next to each other. Or on the one side, Richards Bay Coal Terminal, then you get, Transnet person sitting there. So they're working out things together. They need to do it much more operationally because it's for the good of South Africa. These egos or whatever they are, which are stopping this, must be pushed aside because South Africa is the loser when there's tension here. And I think everybody should realise that they need to do this for South Africa Incorporated. And maybe even an outside champion needs to come in to try and make sure that this happens. But in actual fact, they're not too far apart. They could be working far more efficiently. And it's that efficiency that the shippers are looking for. And we have been renowned. It has been renowned as a terminal that is the benchmark for the world. But every time we go to a coal conference now, they say, what's going on with you? You've slipped back. You slipped back in 2012. You didn't even do well in 2013. Here, Indonesia's collapsing. You've got such a lot of opportunity to move out there. Why don't you do it? And that's what foreigners ask all the time. They are perplexed. But this is a government-public partnership here. And I think nobody must allow tension to get in the way of what's good for South Africa.
Now, what sort of infrastructure will RBCT need to reach that 110 million capacity?
This is the thing, you don't want to have big capex. Now, Transnet, which is a state-owned enterprise, getting on, a platform and saying we will build a new port. Well, that comes at the expense of South Africa. We own Transnet. We are the shareholders of Transnet. You might say, well, the state president is our proxy and he holds the shares, but technically speaking, a state-owned enterprise belongs for the people. They mustn't make statements that lead to big capital expenditure and all this sort of thing because it's our money that they're dealing with. So they need to be cautious about what they say. They have changed their tax saying, no, we won't build a harbour. That's the latest statement, that we will rather go through the dry dock terminal at Richards Bay, which is fair enough because that uses a general freight line. I don't think there'll be any problems with that, and perhaps that is a solution because now they're saying, there are not as many, there's not as much demand from the coal juniors as they thought to build their own port. Well, they're getting away from that. I think that's important. And then they're also talking to Grindrod, which wants to put up a small port tailor-made for juniors there. But, Richards Bay Coal Terminal is saying, hang on guys, we've got an existing setup here. Look at what we need here. It's minimal. It's absolutely low capital cost. We won't even know about it. Why spend too much money? All you need is an additional tipler, one more ship loader, stockyard expansion, a reconfiguration of the power supply, because the big ticket item will be, the expenditure on an additional berth. They don't need an additional berth. That's where the big money would go. They can use the existing berth, bring in another ship loader. So, it's a no-brainer from a capital expenditure point of view. Why go over the top with capital expenditure when you're just then going to have to charge juniors more to use the facility? Work it on this basis of, you can have an opportunity to really get this capacity quickly and at low cost. And so I think that's what they really need to look at. And they need to, I think the whole of the South African sort of DNA needs to come into this because it affects us all. And sometimes, you don't like what you see. You don't like what you hear. And there is an opportunity here for us to earn foreign exchange. We're desperate for it. And in a very low-cost way and in an efficient way. People who know what they're doing, they do it every day. They've got a lot of this automation. You can see what's going on the big board when you go into their control tower. They need to know now where all the trains are. In the same way, they need to have full visibility of where these trains are, what coal they've got on it, what grade of coal, so that they can really receive them in an efficient way. And that efficiency will help us all. So, people will see us as a premier source of coal as they have in the past. And they won't sort of rely on others to provide this coal, which is still going to be in demand, for a long time, despite all the climate change horrors. You can't change quickly, and you can see China still going for a lot of coal, although it's doing everything. It's going for the renewable energy, it's going for the nuclear energy, it's going for gas, it's going for coal, but it's so big. It can do that, and it's still going in a big way. And India, going for our coal and being prepared to take the low-grade coal.
And environmentally, I know coal is like a no-no, but
Yes.
the Richards Bay Coal Terminal has a very good environmental record.
Yeah, I mean, you get there, and it's just so clean. It's mind-boggling. When you think of coal dust and all that, there's no dust around. I mean, I took my finger, I put it down on the railings, all over the place. I couldn't get any dust, and they've got fantastic dust suppression systems that they use in their. The system is ubiquitous. You see it all over the place. Whereas, I looked across to a rival terminal across the way, and I was horrified at the amount of dust. So, they are environmentally conscious. They are also conscious of transformation. When you're talking to the 8 executives, 6 of them are historically disadvantaged. You don't always get that.
Yeah.
And they big on bursaries for people in the area. So you find, you speak to one of the general managers there. No, he was a bursar. He came through the system. And they help the community there. You talk to the fellow, the GM in charge of legal, you find he also doubles up as a maths teacher. So they're doing a nice sort of, there's a nice vibe. They're very keen on transformation. And it's led by women. And these women, I think they don't suffer from the same ego problem. They get things done.
You said it, not me.
And they can sort of laugh about the egos that get in the way. But I think that, I don't see a major problem there. I don't see a major problem with Transnet at the moment, doing very well, operationally upping its game. There can be a meeting of the minds, and there needs to be for South Africa's sake.
Thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on South Africa's mining industry.